I am making a voiceless Ryu-ge swordsoul deck profile. I recently played this at my locals and got third place with it, even though there was a place of cards that weren't in the deck, which I'll get to those when I get there. But I ended up losing round one against Phantasm Spiral Anti-Meta. Then I won against the Shining Sarcophagus Dark Magician. Then I won against Snake Eye Fire King. And then finally I won against Monarch. But overall, I'm actually really happy with how the deck did. So, without any further delay, start off with the monsters. I play 3 copies of Lo, the Prayers of the Voiceless Voice. Lo has the effect that when normal or special summoned, you can take a voiceless continuous spell trap from your deck and place it face up in your spell and trap zone. And then, if you ritual summon a light dragon or ritual monster, then you can use Lo as the entire tribute. And then, I think it has to be the same thing, is special summon. Let's see. Blah, blah, where's the effect? Okay. And then if a light ritual monster that is warrior or dragon is special summoned to your field, you can then special summon Lo from your graveyard. So you can tribute Lo, summon Skull Guardian, and then Lo's effect will summon itself. That sort of thing. Then you can only use each effect of Lo, the Prayers of the Voiceless Voice, once per turn. Then I play 3 copies of Diviner of the Herald. Diviner of the Herald lets you send a monster from your extract to the graveyard. I think there's a restriction there, I don't remember. Okay, you send a fairy monster from your deck or extract to the graveyard. And if you do, increase this monster's level by the sent monster's level till the end of the turn. And then if Diviner of the Herald is tributed, you can special summon a level 2 or lower light fairy from your deck to your field. This is only played because you can tribute it when you ritual summon, to then be able to summon Lo from the deck. Then I play 3 copies of Saphira, Dragon Queen of the Voiceless Voice. Saphira has the effect that you can discard it and then send a ritual spell from your deck to the grave for cost. To then be able to add a light ritual that is that is warrior or dragon from your deck to your hand. And then you can banish Saphira from your graveyard to be able to ritual summon a light dragon or warrior monster, ignoring but just ritual summon it. Anyway, moving on to the next voiceless. I play 2 copies of Skull Guardian of the Voiceless Voice. Skull Guardian has the effect that while Lo is on your field or in your graveyard, it gains 2050 attack, which makes it 4100. And then when it is summoned, you can add a voiceless voice. I think it's a voiceless voice monster. Or a ritual monster that is warrior or dragon from your deck to your hand. And then while you control Lo, Prayers of the Voiceless Voice, when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can then use Skull Guardian to negate that effect if you do destroy that card. And then next, I play 1 copy of Saravis, the Ancient and Ascended. Saravis has the effect that when it's on the field, you can return it to your hand when your opponent would special summon a monster to negate the summon, and if you do, I believe you banish that monster. I don't remember, honestly. Okay, and then while it's in your hand, if your opponent activates a card or effect that would target a monster on the field, you can discard Saravis to then negate that card. Personally, I want to play 3 copies of Saravis in this deck, just because it's actually a good card to have if you need something like Lo to go off, but your opponent has an infinite impermanence. And then lastly, for the Voiceless Voice cards, I play 1 copy of Saravis, Dragon Sage of the Voiceless Voice. Saravis has the effect that while it's in your hand, you can special summon it by shuffling 2 spells, including a ritual or by shuffling 2 spells or traps into the deck, including a ritual spell. And then you can shuffle them from your graveyard or hand into the deck. And then Cerberus has the effect that during your opponent's, I believe it's during your opponent's turn as a quick effect. Let's see. Okay, now. When your opponent activates a card or effect, Cerberus has the quick effect of being able to return to your hand to then summon a light ritual that has warrior or dragon from your deck, and then, however, that monster is returned to your hand during the end phase of the next turn. So usually I'll use Dragon Sage to summon the Ancient and Ascended Cerberus, just because having Cerberus on field is technically a negate, and then having in your hand is another negate, so yeah. And then for the swordsoul monsters, I play 3 copies of Incredible Ecclesia the Virtuous. Ecclesia can be special summoned from your hand while your opponent controls more monsters than you do. And then you can tribute Ecclesia to be able to special summon I believe it has to be a level 4 or lower swordsoul. Let's see. During the main phase, it's a quick effect. You can tribute special summon a swordsoul monster or fallen Alabaz from your hand or deck. And then during the end phase, if a fusion monster is sent to your graveyard, it turns to your hand, but that's hardly ever going to happen because this deck only has 1 fusion monster, and it's only in here for Diviner with the Herald. But you can only use each effect in Ecclesia once per turn. And then next, I play 3 copies of Swordsoul of Moyi. Swordsoul of Moyi has the effect that if it's normal or special summon, you can reveal a Swordsoul card or a worm that's in your hand, summon a Swordsoul token. Swordsoul tokens are level 4 light worms with 0 attack and defense, but they're also tuners. And then while you control a Swordsoul token, you cannot summon from the extra deck except for synchro monsters. And then Moyi has the last effect that if it's sent to the graveyard for a synchro summon, then you get to draw a card. And then one thing I will go ahead and say now is that when I was playing this deck at my local, I didn't have the 2 of the 3 Moyis I needed, so I didn't play any of them. Instead, I played Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion, which that card never came up. Most of the time, if I had my hand and I was in a bad position, I just had to set it and pass. But anyway. Next, I play 1 copy of Swordsoul Ataye. Ataye has the effect that when it's normal or special summoned, or at least believe that's how it's triggered. Okay, no, it's not. But you can banish a Swordsoul card or a worm from your graveyard to summon a Swordsoul token. And then if it's sent to the graveyard for a synchro summon, you can then send a Swordsoul card from your deck to the graveyard. Honestly, I don't ever really use that last effect because of how this deck plays. And you can only use each effect of Swordsoul of Taye once per turn. Next, I play 3 copies of Swordsoul Strategist Longwon. Longwon has the effect that while it's in your hand, you can send one other Swordsoul or Worm card that's in your hand to the graveyard. You then special summon this card and a Swordsoul token. And then, if it's sent to the graveyard for a synchro summon, you can then inflict 1200 points of damage to your opponent. I like this card in the deck just because it is a good card to have if you're getting close to being in time. And then, well, that's the thing, in case I forgot that you can only use it effect on turn. And then moving on to the Ryu-ge cards, I play 1 copy of True King Barastos the Fathomer. The Fathomer can be special summoned from your hand by destroying 2 monsters from your hand or face-up field, with at least one of them being water. And it has another effect if both are water, but that hardly ever comes up, so I'm not even going to go over it. And its other effect is if it's destroyed, you can then special summon 1 non-water worm, usually Taye, from your deck. And you can only use each effect of Barastos the Fathomer once per turn. And then next, I play 1 copy of Ryu-ge Kairo Ryu-ge Kaiba. Kaiba has the effect that while it's in your hand, you can put it at the bottom of your deck to then be able, or you shuffle it into the deck, not at the bottom. You shuffle it into the deck to then be able to add a, what was the name again? Ryu-ge Realm Dino Domains from your deck to your hand. And then beyond that, you're never using its other effects. The Ryu-ge cards are honestly just in here for being able to have a rank 10 engine. Then next, I play 2 copies of Genro Ryu-ge Hakuba. Hakuba's just in here as a name. And it's the same thing for Cairo Ryu-ge Emva. However, one thing I will go ahead and say is that both of these have a similar effect where if Hakuba is banished and then 2 other cards are banished, while it was banished, you can then special summon it from your banished zone at any time. And then Emva is the same way, just with your graveyard. So they actually have ways of summoning themselves. And then lastly, I play 2 copies of Sosei Ryu-ge Misva. Misva has the effect that you can place it in your pendulum scale, and then while it's in your scale, you can add a non-pendulum Ryu-ge card from your deck to your hand, and then you destroy Misva. And then Misva has the effect that while it's in your extra deck, if 2 or more cards you control are destroyed, you contribute a level 10 Ryu-ge monster and then special summon this card from your extra deck, treating it as a ritual summon. And even though it's a ritual summon, it technically does go to your extra deck because it came from your extra monster zone because it came from the extra deck. And then lastly, for the monsters, I play 1 copy of Archnemesis Protos. This is mainly just in here for the swordsoul cards, as one of these swordsoul cards is actually able to add Protos from deck to hand. And you actually get that card with a 1-card combo that I'm still trying to figure out. But the main thing is you summon Protos, then you can summon back Hakuba, and then you end up making a Verudris. Moving on to the spells. For the 3 1-of spells, I play 1 Blessing of the Voiceless Voice, 1 Ryu-ge Warzone, and 1 Ryu-ge Realm Dino Domains. As far as I can tell, Dino Domains is the only realm that needs to be played in the deck, as it's the only one that really does anything. Whereas some of the others actually can benefit other decks like Ryzeal and Malice. Which at my locals, there's 2 people playing Malice. I think it's going to end up being 3. And then 1 or 2 that play Ryzeal. But anyway, Dino Domains has the effect that all of your level 10 Ryu-ge monsters and dinosaurs, all your level 10 Ryu-ges gain 300 attack points, and then it has an additional effect it gives to level 10 dinosaurs and Sosei Ryu-ge Misva, where if your opponent activates the effect of a monster on field, you can shuffle a Ryu-ge continuous spell from your field and place it on the bottom of the deck, and if you do, negate that monster's effect. Which, this card is actually kind of terrifying in Dinosaur, just because it makes Ultimate Conductor Tyranno a monster negate, which should not be a thing. And then Ryu-ge Warzone has the effect that when it's activated, you take a Worm, Sea Serpent, and Dinosaur from your deck, add 1 to your hand, banish the second, and then send the last to the grave. And then while Misva is face up in your extra deck, you can then activate Warzone's effect to special summon a level 10 dinosaur, or level 10 Ryu-ge Dinosaur, Sea Serpent, and Worm from your 1 from deck, grave, and banish. And you can only use each effective Ryu-ge Warzone once per turn. And then Blessing of the Voiceless Voice has the effect that once per turn you can take a Voiceless Voice monster that's banished on your graveyard and add to your hand, which really you're only going to use that if your opponent ends up banishing low. Because everything else you'd rather have in grave or banish. I forget what the last part is. I know it's a ritual summon. And then if a non-ritual monster is normal or special summoned, then this spell lets you ritual summon a ritual monster that is warrior or dragon from your hand by trading monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed the level of the ritual monster. And if you do, it cannot be destroyed by battle. And you can only use that You can only use each effect of Blessings of the Voiceless Voice once per turn. And then next, I play 2 copies of Prayers of the Voiceless Voice. Prayers of the Voiceless Voice lets you tribute light monsters in order to ritual summon a light ritual monster that is dragon or warrior. And then while it's in your graveyard, it has the grave effect of... I apologize, I have rarely ever actually used the grave effect, so... If a face-up light ritual monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's card, except during the damage step, then you can banish this card from your graveyard, special summon a Cerebus, the Ancient Ascended, Saphira, Queen of Dragons, or a Skull Guardian Protector of the Voiceless Voice from your hand or deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. And you can only use each effect of Prayers of the Voiceless Voice once per turn, or is it only that one? I can never remember. Okay, you can only use the grave effect of Prayers of the Voiceless Voice once per turn. Which, that one makes more sense. And then next, I play 2 copies of Pre-Preparation of Rites. This just lets you add a ritual spell from your deck to your hand, and then you can add a ritual monster that ritual spell mentions. Which usually is going to be Prayers to the Voiceless Voice and Skull Guardian. But if you already have a Skull Guardian in your hand, then you would add a Cerebus. Then I play 3 copies of Barrier of the Voiceless Voice. Barrier of the Voiceless Voice has the effect that once per turn, you can add a Voiceless Voice or a Light or I think it's the Light Warrior or Dragon Ritual. Let's see. Okay, add a Voiceless Voice card or a Skull Guardian Ritual monster from your deck to your hand, except for another copy of Barrier of the Voiceless Voice. And then while you control a low Prayers of the Voiceless Voice and a light ritual monster, your light monsters cannot be targeted by card effects, nor also your opponent can only attack the light ritual monsters, which usually will be Skull Guardian of the Voiceless Voice or Sosei Ryu-ge Mitzvah, which is 38 and 41 respectively. Or it gets certainly be 41 and 38. But anyway, point is, this makes so your light monsters can't be targeted while you control ritual and low, and then your opponent can only attack your ritual monsters. And then once per turn, you can add a voiceless card from deck to hand. And lastly, for the spells, I play 3 copies of swordsoul Emergence. This is just once per turn, add a swordsoul, or once per turn. You can activate it to add a swordsoul monster from your deck to your hand. Or if you control a synchro monster, you can add any worm instead. This is how you search Protoss. And then it has a grave effect that lets you manipulate the levels of monsters, but that honestly isn't needed at all in this deck, so I don't bother with it. Like I said, that's a lie because you can actually use it to manipulate levels, so you can summon something like Chaos Angel using a light and dark monster from the deck. I don't even remember if I have any... Oh, yeah, I do have a dark monster in the deck. And then lastly, for the traps, I play 1 copy of Radiance of the Voiceless Voice. Radiance has 2 effects you can use. We can only use 1 of the 2 effects per turn. Where... I always forget the first one is. You can shuffle a light ritual monster that is dragon or warrior, or a ritual spell from your hand or graveyard into the deck, and if you do, you can add to your hand, or special summon a Voiceless Voice monster from your deck. However, what I usually use is the other effect, where you can target cards your opponent controls up to the number of light ritual monsters you control that are warrior and dragon, and then destroy them. And that is it for the traps. Moving on to the hand traps. For the hand traps, I play 3 copies of Drone Lockbird. This just makes it when your opponent adds a card from the deck to their hand during the main phase. You can use Drone Lockbird to make it so that until the end of the turn, neither player can add cards from their deck to their hand. And I believe that would include drawing as well. Yeah, it does. Then I play 3 copies of Effect Veiler. Effect Veiler has the effect that during your opponent's main phase quick effect, you can discard this card to the graveyard, and then you can target an effect monster your opponent controls to negate that monster's effect. And then I believe Drone Lockbird is a once per turn thing. Or is it once per turn on somewhere? Okay, it's not. And then next, I play 3 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. Ghost Ogre has the effect that while it's on your face up on your field or in your hand, and your opponent activates the effect of a card that was already on the field, or your opponent activates a monster effect, or the effect of a spell or trap that's on the field, or that was already on the field, then you can discard Ghost Ogre to destroy that card. So like if your opponent has a field spell, they use this effect that isn't an on-activation effect, then you can use Ghost Ogre to then destroy that field spell. Just an example. And then you can only use each of that effect of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit once per turn. Next, I play 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Ash Blossom has the effect that you can discard it to then negate any card your opponent or that's activated. That moves a card from deck to hand, deck to grave, or deck to field. And then lastly, I play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Infinite Impermanence can be activated from your hand while you control no cards to target one effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects. And then if this card was set when it was activated, it also negates the effects of spells and traps in its column until the end of the turn. And that is it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. For the links, I play 1 copy of Relinquished Anima. Relinquished Anima is in the deck just because you can link summon it by using a copy of Low. Anima's effect is just, if a monster is in a zone it points to, you can equip that monster to this card. It gains attack equal to the equipped monster's attack. Then I play 1 copy of IP Masquerena. IP Masquerena just has the effect that during your opponent's main phase quick effect, you can link summon a monster using this card you control. And then a link monster that is link summoned using IP Masquerena cannot be destroyed by card effects, or your opponent's card effects. Then I play 1 copy of SP Little Knight. SP Little Knight has the effect that if it's link summoned using a fusion, synchro, Xyz, or link monster, then you can target 1 card on the field or in the graveyard, banish that card. And then SP Little Knight has another effect where if your opponent activates a card or effect, you can then banish 2 monsters on the field, with at least 1 being a card you control. Banish both until the end phase. And you can use each effect of SP Little Knight once per turn. And I believe there's an attack restriction with its first effect. Okay. If you use SP Little Knight's first effect, then your monsters cannot attack directly. That was the attack restriction that I was remembering. But usually, if you're using that effect, it's because you made it with IP Masquerena on your opponent's turn. So most time it won't come up at all. Next, I play 2 copies of Dynamondo. I have yet to need to summon Dynamondo. But Dynamondo has the effect that if this card is special summoned, you can target a card on the field and a virtual monster in your graveyard, shuffle both into the deck. And then during your opponent's turn, as a quick effect, you can tribute it to then target a ritual monster that's in your graveyard. Either add it to your hand or special summon it. And you can only use each effect of Dynamondo once per turn. And then for the Xyz monsters, I play 1 copy of Verudris, Bringer of the End Times. Verudris has the effect that when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can detach a material, and if you do, negate that effect. And then you can detach another material to then be able to destroy that card. And then if Verudris attacks while it has material, then it can destroy 1 card in the field. And then if Verudris is destroyed while it has material, it can destroy 1 card in the field. And you can only use each effect of Verudris, Final Bringer at the End Times, once per turn. For the Synchros, I play 1 copy of Herald of the Arclight. I think I got that name right. Okay. Herald's only purpose in this deck is to, when you send it off of Herald of the Diviner, or Diviner of the Herald, I mean, you can then add a ritual spell or ritual monster from your deck to your hand. And then next, I play 3 copies of Swordsoul Grandmaster Shishao. Shishao has the effect that when special summoned, you can add a sword soul card from your deck to your hand. And then, if your opponent and then once per turn during, like I said, I think it's a once per turn quick effect. Okay, yeah. As a quick effect, you can banish a sword soul card or a worm that's in your graveyard. Target a monster your opponent controls and negates effects until the end of the turn. And I believe there's one other effect. Nope. I believe that's also a once per turn thing. Okay, yeah. However, one thing to keep in mind with these two effects is that you can only use one of those two effects of Shishao once per turn. So if you use the search, you can't use the negate, and if you use the negate, then you can't use the search. Which most of the time that won't matter, as usually you summon this on your turn, get its search, and then use the negation on your opponent's turn anyway. And then next, I play one copy of Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend. Scarlight has the effect that when you once per turn, you can activate its effect to destroy all special summoned effect monsters on the field that have attack less than or equal to its own, and then inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent for each one. This is just in here for time rules. However, technically you can use Swordsoul Emergence. Let me check it real quick before I make sure I'm correct. Okay, never mind. I'm incorrect. So just ignore that part. Emergence has the grave effect of being able to banish it to target a worm you control, and either increase or decrease its level by 1. Which, there is a monster in here that you could technically use that with. And then next, I play one copy of... Oh boy. I can never remember how to pronounce this card's name without looking at it. Swordsoul, Sinister Sovereign, Qixing Longwan. That's my best attempt. This long one has the effect that when you synchro summon a worm synchro monster, you can then draw one card. And then if your opponent activates the effect of a monster, you can banish that monster. If you do, inflict 1,200 points of damage to your opponent. And then if your opponent activates a spell or trap card or effect, you can banish that card, and if you do, inflict 1,200 points of damage. And then you can only use each effect of Sinister Sovereign once per turn. Then I play one copy of Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign Changying. I did get that right. Yeah, I did. Changying has the effect that it gains 100 attack and defense for each banished card, and your opponent's monsters lose 100 attack and defense for each banished card. And then if a card is banished, then Changying can then be able to banish a card your opponent controls and a card in your opponent's graveyard. You can only use you can only use that effect of Changying once per turn. And then if Changying would be destroyed by card effect, you can then banish a card from your graveyard instead. And then lastly, for the synchros, I play one copy of Chaos Angel. Chaos Angel hardly ever comes up, but you can use any light or dark monster as a tuner for its synchro summon. If it is special summoned, then you can target one card of the field and banish it. And then Chaos Angel has 2 effects depending on whether or not you use a light or dark monster to make it. Where if you use dark, I would say make sure I'm going to read just be certain. Okay, if you use dark, then monsters you control can't be destroyed in battle, and if you use light, then your synchro monsters you control are unaffected by your opponent's card effects. Which the light is the easy one to get. It's dark that's the harder one to get. Because I believe in this deck, the only way you're really going to be able to make this using light and dark is by using Diviner of the Herald and Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend. And then lastly, for the extra deck, I play one copy of Elder Entity Natis. This is also a thing here for Diviner of the Herald, as Natis has the effect that if it's into the graveyard, then you can target a card in the field and destroy it. Or I believe that's how it works. That might be... Okay, that's it. And then that is it for my deck profile. If you have any ideas of what I can do to improve the deck, any ideas for decks like to be made in the future, or decks you like to see face each other, feel free to comment down below. And thank you for watching.